Hey, how you doing? All right, let's get into this. All right, let's get to our studies. This is he does the Cataline. We did yesterday. I think it was the Sicilian Dragon. If I wasn't, yeah, this the classic dragon. So we're learning how certain openings. It's not about mates. It's about positional sacrifices. He's teaching us. Jeremy Silman is. Okay. Make sure I spelled that right. Yep. Okay. One would think that many players with white would be delighted to acquire such a position by move 13. So let's get to move 13. Excuse me. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, g4, d5, bishop g, c takes, knight f3, c5. Wait a second, what did I miss here? Uh-oh. Ay, ay, ay. And then c5 here. And then it castles. Knight c6. C takes. Bishop takes. Oh. What? Did I miss something? Hold on, let me see if I missed something. Give me a second. E6, G, D, D takes C, F3, C5, castles, knight C6. Oh, I missed it. It was it's queen A4. That can't be right. Yeah, queen A4. That pins the knight to the king. C takes here. C takes D4. Knight takes D4. Queen takes D4. Bishop takes C6. Bishop D7. Rook D1. Queen takes D1. Queen takes D1. Bishop takes. Queen C2. And then bishop E7. Queen takes C4 and then castles. Okay, let me get a drink of tea real quick. It's got a little frog. Thank you for your patience. Okay, this is what it says. One would think that many players with white would be delighted to acquire such a position on move 13 in the opening. The intentional moves are, and then we got this. Now he's going to the next page when we get to move 13. White has a queen for black's rook and bishop, and all of white's pawns are healthy, and his king is safe. So why would anyone in his right mind actually play for the position as black? That's basically what he's saying. Why would you do this? This is just, you're thinking to yourself, you got a rook and a bishop for a queen. It's like, what are you? What you think to yourself, what's rhyme or reason to this position? And then he says this: shockingly, world champion grandmaster Anderson often reached this position, which he considered to be a drawn line, and he proved it over and over by halting the point with many of the world's finest players, even Kasparov, including Kasparov. Why is black okay here? Quite simply, his position is devoid of weaknesses. He's extremely solid. His bishop on c6 here, black's bishop on c6. We're going to put a dot around there. Gives him ownership of the light squares. And white found it more or less impossible to tear down black's fortress. In other words, White's only favorable imbalance is his material advantage, and that alone isn't enough to generate any real winning chances. So basically, black's position is rock solid, no weaknesses. There's no way to really take advantage of anything, and this is basically a draw. This is a game between Anderson as black, and it's Moscow 1981. This is enough to show how just solid black's game is. This game is here. I'll have to put in here so that there's a game that goes with it. I'll put this here. Just give me a second. I'll put the game in for you. So that if you wanted to look up the game, you could. Let me make sure I spelled the first player's name right. I did not like to actually spelled it wrong. Okay, perfect. Okay, there we go. Let me make sure Anderson is spelled right. Okay, and then we have to do Moscow. (1981). So we got to get to see how this is happening. Okay, from here on, this is actually it from a game. And bishop e3, 95, just rock solid. Knight takes, bishop takes, queen g. Oops, not queen b, that would be a mistake. Queen g, rook c to rook d, c8, bishop d4, bishop d8. That holds this position, the pawn. e4, bishop c6, h4. They're trying their hardest to break down the position. Rook d8, bishop c3, trying to hammer this. It's just too well defended. Rook d3, h5, h6. That stops that. Rook e1, rook a d8. So now the rooks are doubled. Black's well coordinated here. His coordination is wonderful. A6, rook e2. This holds on to everything. White's basically in lockdown mode. Rook d1, and this is trying for black to either undermine via there, and then try to get a pawn in here, a rook in there, and then have two rooks. Have two rooks, one here and one there. That's what black would be in very happy to acquire. Rook e1, rook d1 to d3, rook e2, rook b5, rook c2, bishop a4, b3, bishop c6. This weakened the position a little bit. Queen f4. He's trying to get this pawn rolling to get some attack going. Bishop d6, bishop e5, bishop f, f8, bishop c3, and then bishop d6. And this was a draw here. He's showing us through certain openings how even if you think that you're up material, is that enough advantage to win the game? I think you're kind of getting to see how Jeremy Silman is showing us that. It's not about memorizing these opening lines. It's about understanding why the grandmasters and the players choose to trade down into these type of positions. They understand the imbalances for white, even though white's up a queen for a bishop and rook. It's not enough compensation to outweigh the inability to basically position and attack. There's not enough pieces for an attack. I guess I'm trying to think of the word that's the best, and there's just not enough material to launch an attack. And black's position's too rock solid. And so just when you're thinking about doing certain moves and maybe doing an exchange sacrifice, ask yourself a question. After the exchange sacrifice, or if you accept an exchange sacrifice, I had it wrong. I did it inverse. Because you're going to be the one that has to decide if it's worth going down that line, because you have to set up those moves for that to happen. Is it worth the material? Like, is acquiring a rook for a bishop and knight enough compensation for the position? Or if you give up a rook for a bishop and knight, is that enough compensation for the position? And that's what we're learning. It's not the openings, because openings come, openings go. What that means is like fashion. It comes in fashion, then it goes out of fashion. But the ideas are the same throughout chess, about imbalances and about, is the trade right, all these different things. And so we'll get into another game. Enough of that. I just wanted to emphasize why certain positions are what Jeremy Silman is trying to emphasize here, because it's very important that we understand. He's not just showing us this without a plan in mind. And I always think about it, at a certain point we have to take the initiative to This is a Spassky versus Fischer. To take the next step and actually study. So just keep that in mind, that it comes down to the book can help us to a certain degree, and then we have to pick up where the book leaves off, which is understand, look at games, maybe. I find that the best way of learning is using your own games because of one thing. You're the best judge of what you were feeling at that time, my friends, and that's something that you have to overcome with your your fears, doubts, and why you didn't go down and exchange. I mean, why you didn't accept the exchange sacrifice, or why you didn't go down a certain move. You're better to have done that and find out what caused you to miss it, and then you'll get better. Okay. This is what he talks about for this. It's the Ruy Lopez Marshall attack. Material sacrifice that creates a battle of the imbalances are a commonplace in virtually every opening. An excellent example of this is the highly popular Marshall attack, which sees black offering a pawn for a lead in development. Active pieces and a slight weakening of the light squares in white's king side, and good dynamic chances. On the other hand, white has a solid position and an extra pawn. Which chapter is this? Chapter 4. It's the psychology and meanings. That's where we are. It's his Reassess Your Chess 4th edition. Okay, we're going to be going into, this is a Fischer Spassky game. This is before they played Riki. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'll just say Iceland. This is before they played in Iceland for the world title. This is 1966. So this is, I believe, 6 years before that. So we're going to get to see how solid the Marshall attack is in the Ruy Lopez. And it's the concepts that we're actually diving into, not the move orders, because you can have this concept with all your let me make sure I got this. The concepts are, I guess, universal. Knight f6. Wow, this is an interesting one. He went down the Columbus variation, and then white castled. Okay, Morphy's defense. Let's see what happens here. Have we closed variation? So we're going down. We're switching through a ton of different variations. Rook e1, still closed. b5. We'll soon be reaching the Marshall attack in a couple moves. Okay, now it's closed, but we still haven't reached the Marshall. We're getting closer. In this diagram, both sides have put their faith in their respect of short and long-term imbalances. Black has a lead in development and at times scores a brutal knockout at this point. However, even if white's threats are not very big during this time, there's trades in the end game. Let's see. However, if white, However, even if white nullifies the immediate threat and trades into an endgame, had to word that right. Endgame. The active black pieces will often offer excellent chances for a draw. So what black's pieces will offer an excellent chance for a draw in the endgame. Even though white trades down, gets the pieces off the board, black has enough solidity, development, and safety of their kings that outweighs the potential loss of a pawn that's coming pretty soon to our game. So g3. This is a really interesting move order. g3, interesting. I think the idea is knight here into f5. I'm thinking that's the idea. Hold on. Wait a second. Wait a second. He did knight. Didn't he do? Hold on. Uh-oh. Sorry about this. Wow. I don't know why I turned the page. That's interesting. c3 here. I knew there was something. This didn't go down the line that I thought it was, because usually c3 is played and then d4. Then black usually trades off here, and white trades off, and white has a massive center at that point. So this makes more sense. I was like, there's something altogether wrong here. There we go. Here's the Marshall attack. This is it. Kaboom. E takes d5. Knight takes d5. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. Rook takes e4. And then c6 to cement this knight. Now this knight is really, really, really strong. It's actually outposted at this present moment, because the only way that white could potentially try to dislodge the knight would be d3, c4, or potentially a bishop trade could happen, but then you're losing the two bishops and not so well of a opportunity for this to be coming down the pike. I wouldn't trade like that. That's just not natural. Okay, g3. Now this makes more sense. The knight goes back, because the knight's like, I don't want, probably now after this move here, the bishop would probably go down with that trade. So like if something was like this to make a spot, you would probably be able to play that. Yes, there's a pretty big bind on c4. So actually after d4 there's really not much that could be had here, because then bishop f6, the rook can actually slide all the way back. And white's down in development, but potentially could, with a little bit of play of b3, open up a new file for an attack on the rook via a3. So that's why, if you're wondering why black retreated back, the knight retreated back to f6, was it didn't want to fracture the c pawn and create an isolated d pawn. Because later on, if you could trade down the pieces, or if you get to a rook and queen versus rook and queen, and your rook can barricade the pawn, be in front of it, your king can sometimes come over. And even if you trade queens off and you get to a rook versus rook with an isolated pawn, you barricade the pawn in front, bring the king in, and you win it. So just remember, certain endgames are won positionally. And you'll start to learn that through the imbalances, just practicing with the imbalances. Like d5 it makes a lot of sense, because this locks the center, and it also prepares for bishop f5, and even anchoring the bishop on e5. And there's really no way for a rook to dislodge it, and there's a mating threat on g7. So d4, bishop d6. Yeah, he has to try to dislodge this rook e1, and the rook obliges. Next, the bishop could potentially go out to g5, and there could be a potential exchange sacrifice at that point. You can play if the bishop came back here, you can play queen to e2 and then try to exchange. Then the rook would have to come in front, and at that point the queen probably would have to shift a little bit over to f3, and still you have a similar idea. potentially an exchange sack. Rook e1, bishop g5, g4, queen d3. There is an idea of bishop c2, bishop f5, bishop takes, f6, and then Kazam mate. c5 is played here, trying to undermine the position. D takes c, bishop takes c, queen takes d, a rook takes. If you're wondering which rook to take with, the one that's the least active or that's not really doing anything probably should be the one. You want to activate all your pieces. Bishop f4. So when black actually left the square d6 to come over and grab the pawn after the exchange, d takes c and then bishop takes c5. Bobby Fischer jumped on that with bishop f4, and he now dominates the file where the bishop would love to be. So the bishop is kind of stuck. The only way it can potentially get in is through here and there, potentially trading off. But you could actually, if you wanted to, I'm wrong. You could, if you wanted to, just move back and then trade off that way too. H6. This is to allow the knight to reroute into. It's kind of a standard idea in a lot of openings to have the knight go to h7 to g5. Rook a3, knight a3, and then the idea is trying to get to one of these outposts here, one of these two outposts from there. g5, this attacks the bishop, which makes the bishop have to move. Bishop e, bishop takes, rook d2. Knight c2, rook e8, rook takes e8, knight takes e8, and then knight to e3, bishop f3. Minus a pawn, but black has enough compensation for that. Bishop c2, knight d6, and then b3. He's trying. White's trying to eliminate the pawns on the second rank so that he could free up his pieces for mobilization. King f8, a4, knight e4, bishop takes, bishop takes. Now all the pawns are off the second rank. A takes b, a takes b, b4, rook b2, g4, king g2, king f1, king f6, rook a5, rook b1, king e2, rook b2, and then they agreed to a draw here. White is still a pawn up, but black's still alive, active. Black's still active. The draw is now forced since king d1. So king d1 would be dangerous only for white. So this is actually a forced position. So this is an example. If I'll show you back here, 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 and then here. Okay, we're going to now get to the point. Let's get rid of this and just do it from right here. Right here. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to be looking at what would happen if King D1. Because I know you're thinking, let's try to win this. It'd be dangerous for white. Bishop D3. Rook A6, check. King E5. Rook takes A6. Rook takes F2. H4. King F4. Knight D5. King takes G4. And basically, bishop takes, and then king takes, and it's something similar to that. It's clear that black's compensation for the pawn isn't just a hope and a prayer. It's based on sound positional consideration that lasts later into the game. So this pawn sacrifice lasted into the endgame, as we can see. Okay, later into the game, one might wonder why everyone wouldn't play a line that gives black a short-term attack and then a long-term positional compensation. So it gives black a short-term attack and a long-term compensation. Oh, sorry. The answer is, okay, well, hold on. I want to make sure I do this. One might wonder why everyone would play a line that gives black a short-term attack and a long-term positional compensation. Okay, that's right. I just wanted to make sure I read that right. I wanted to make sure it wasn't white that didn't have a short-term compensation. Attack. The answer is that white has many ways to avoid falling victim to a fast mate. And through the resulting positions, though the resulting positions are often drawn, black has to suffer a bit, perhaps not the kind of result that we desire. Attacking fans would dream of, but fully acceptable as far as the theory is concerned. So this is theory based. We haven't really reached there yet. That's when you reach like 2500 when you get there. Because you leave, there's still imbalances, but you really leave a realm for a while, and you go into theory world, as I like to call it. And at that point, it's who knows enough theory in certain openings that's going to win. Because it's who goes to calculation or the imbalance before the other one is still in theory. And you have to also be careful when you're in theory that you don't miss your opponent's weakness or a weak move that your opponent does that would compromise their position enough for you to either win a pawn, which without any compensation for them, or a piece without any compensation, or maybe even checkmate. So it must also be admitted that many players with the white pieces are not too excited by those. A pleasant but probably not winning. Pleasant but probably not winning. Right. End games. These unsatisfied, basically continuations, seek new ways to stir up counterplay. One type is here. Let me see. If we go back to move 12. Hold on, let me get back to move 12. after c6, d4, bishop d6, rook e1, queen h4, g3, queen h3, rook e4, g5, queen f1. I'm wondering what in the world is that all about. Huh. I have to check. Why is g5? Why doesn't he just? Why doesn't he just take here? Oh, it's a fork. And then a piece falls. Okay, gotcha. Very tricky. Avoiding bishop takes g5, which is a double question mark blunder. Queen f5. It's not wise to put too many pieces on undefended squares, Jeremy Soma says. So rook here, queen takes, king takes, f1, and bishop to f5. Pawn f3. That can't. What? Pawn f3? Hold on. Wait a second. What? Huh. h6. Interesting. Knight d2. Bishop takes e4. F takes. When a major change is the mutual imbalance has occurred. The mutual imbalance has occurred. See, this is a really interesting position. White's now down an exchange, but he has a pawn for it, and a nice center, and two bishops. Full compensation. But the chances are probably more or less balanced. There's no doubt that material is a major imbalance here. With greed winning many games and also losing its share too. So if you get greedy and take, there's many games where you could lose, because even though you're an exchange up, that's all you're up is an exchange, nothing more, nothing less. You don't have really any compensation for that. White has enough compensation with a good pawn structure, two bishops, and I'm going to say more likely a more safe king too. If you train yourself to view material as just another imbalance, you'll open up a whole new world, a whole new level of understanding where sacrificing for a tactical or a positional compensation is always on the table. On the other hand, bravely taking everything from your opponent often offers bravely taking everything your opponent offers should also be part of your overall mindset in either case. The decision depends on a claim assessment of the imbalance that both sides end up with. So basically what he's saying is you have to look at kind of taking. There was Victor Krochnoi had a belief that if he was given a pawn, he would take it and hold on the entire game and see if he can win, because he's up a pawn at that point. So if you're up an exchange like just what just happened here for black, sometimes you have to take it and then see how the game turns out, because sometimes material is just enough to win. Okay, what time are we at? Whoa, we're doing good. This is a summary here. In summary, how can a player get beyond his fear of parting with material? That's a question. He or she has to train him or herself to view each imbalance as something important, and he or she has to view material as just another imbalance to be collected or considered or rejected, depending on the nature of the individual's position. So it depends on, that's one. How you get over your fear is you look at the pieces as just another imbalance. You don't look at it as a number calculating position, because sometimes the numbers don't add up, but what adds up is your positional advantage. This is number two. If you create an imbalance vision, like you know how some people put on sunglasses when the sun's out. If you're able to put on the imbalance sunglasses, you'll be able to look at the board in a whole different light, and make the search for and understanding of imbalances an additional part of you. Your play strength will take a quantum leap forward. Your rating will too, because you'll be seeing these positional sacrifices, and your opponent will just grab it, not realizing that about 10 or 12 moves down the road they're lost. 3. Embrace your inner greed. This is one of the sessions. Having a material advantage gives you a larger and more powerful army, which can translate to greater forces being brought to key sectors of the board, or key areas of the board, and or the long-term advantage of the endgame odds. Knowing that most endgames will win for the material upside grants him a tremendous flexibility. So if you're up material, you have tremendous flexibility, and sometimes you can even use your material advantage to sacrifice back for better compensation. So by all means, capture everything in your path, as long as you're aware of what, if any, your opponent is getting in return. Be aware of what your opponent is getting in return for that. So just make sure, like I was in a position where if I would have taken the bishop with my rook, it would have been stalemate in one of the games that I played. I was up in a bishop for 2 pawns. I ended up winning the game because there was enough weaknesses for my rook basically to be defeated. Sorry, it wasn't. I was up a bishop, and that's what happened. Is my opponent tried to lock all the pawns down and then make it so their king couldn't move and get stalemate. Didn't fall for that one. Okay, number 3. If you read the board and decide that it's telling you to sacrifice material for a host of positional pluses, don't hesitate to do so. Learning to conquer your chess fears and prejudge is a huge part of improving your overall play of imbalances. Basically, that's what he's saying. Improving your overall game. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, this is number 5. Being a material ahead usually makes a player feel happy, but it's an imbalance and must be weighed against all other imbalances. It might offer a decisive plus, or it might pale to compensation to like a difficult, we call it a static, was like a closed game, or a dynamic imbalance compensation in any given position. So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're on number 6, the last one. Notice how sacrificing material and seeking material gain. Notice how sacrificing material and seeking material gains have been actually placed together in one thing. Both treated material as imbalances, not something to be feared, avoided, worshipped, are always embraced. So basically what he's saying by the kind of worship thing is not that you're worshiping it, but that it's such a dogmatic that we have to do this so much that it's ingrained into us that we miss a potential sacrifice to win a game. And the assessment of either decisions, etc., to take or to sacrifice has to be based on other imbalances on the board. So if you're going to sacrifice material, you have to look at the board, realize you're going down maybe a bishop for a rook, and understand that changes the whole dynamics of the board. And it could be the difference of a win or a loss. So just remember to judge it. And losing sometimes is part of chess, and you have to take those back and learn from them. But make sure that you play to the best of your ability, because that's important. Okay, let's see here. Wait 1 second. We're probably going to stop at this, but we'll read one section before I log off for tonight. The next chapter, our part in part 4, our chapter 4 is mental breakdown, overcoming the trap of I can't and I must. He says this: bowing to panic. Decades of teaching has shown me that when I ask my student why they did or did not play a certain move, I usually get an answer like this: I can't do that because, or I must play that because, or I had to, or he has to. The highly destructive idea that you must do something you must not wish to do is so basically part of a beginning player, chess player, that I would say a player would gain at least 100 rating points if he managed to rid himself of this one mental, emotional, he says it's actually a curse almost. And so we'll stop here, and there's a game that goes with this, so I just wanted to give you a teaser. So we're at the part of breaking down our the trap of I can't and I must. So we'll stop right here. So I want to give you a teaser for next time, so that if you're watching this on a recording, you can watch the next recording when we pick up the next chapter. So that's just a little teaser. Okay, I wanted to thank you all for participating, logging on. This was a really interesting chapter. This taught us, actually I'll just do a quick summary over here. This taught us an important thing, that imbalances need to be looked at rather than piece count. And when you can change your perspective from piece count to imbalance, you'll see an improvement in your chess play. New moves will open up to you that you never thought were possible, and mating opportunities that you didn't see before will be opened to you. It kind of reminds me of what the Lord says, that Ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. That's the type of thing that the Lord Jesus talks about. Also, He also says that we don't. Basically, it's not we don't get because we don't ask. So, like this same type of thing with imbalances. If you don't have that imbalance glasses on, or sunglasses, whatever you want to call it, our app, whatever has you remember to look for imbalances to trigger that imbalanced vision. You'll miss out on so many blessings of combinations that it'll be like, wow. Later on, you'll go over the game and you're like, why didn't I see that? It's because of the vision that you had at that time. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to not break principles, but we're trying to modify the principles so that we can take our chess study and strength to the next level. Okay, I'll leave you on that. You know what? Remember, as what Bruce Lee says, take what you know and apply it and be willing to do something with it. Just what we learned, okay? Remember to apply it. And remember, as important as imbalances is the choice to receive the Lord Jesus, Lord and Savior. Now is the day to make that decision, because we don't know. No person knows what tomorrow will bring. So we can you can put it off, but remember, the choice has to be made one day. Whom are you going to serve? The Lord Jesus Christ, or whatever. And that's the whole thing. So what we have, and that's what the Chess Cruncher motto is based on when we're studying what Bruce Lee said about taking what you know and applying it, be willing to do something with it. We have our motto of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says to the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, evening. And you know what? You have to always keep pushing forward and never losing track of what Hannibal Smith said, that even inside of a random position there's a plan, there's an imbalance. We can change that plan to even inside of a random position there's always an imbalance that we can use to our advantage, which then forms a plan for us. So just keep that in mind. 2 thumbs up, hoorah, be blessed. I will see you tomorrow, and we will work on our next chapter. I can't wait, and I know you can't wait. And if you watch this on a recording, you could go to the next one, and you could see what we're going to be doing. Okay, be blessed. Bye-bye, Team Chess Cruncher. Hoorah.